for the home at 501.
Okay. What about the ditch itself? Is there any complications with the ditch? As far as this property being developed, as far as the ditch needs?
There is a ditch. There is an old ditch on the west portion of the property.
Right. It's on this.
Oh, is
Part
it the south part of the property, Mom?
Yeah, it's on the south part of the
Is
property.
it southwest?
That ditch appears that it could still be used, but it's not being used. And I
Okay.
think Debbie Vedicas was the last person that probably tried to use it. And they didn't use it typically because they had to go all the way up Webster Lane to turn the water off because they irrigate the fields on the west side or the north side of Webster Lane.
Okay.
So there's, right now, I think the only people that use that are the people that are irrigating the farm property on the north side of Webster's Lane that borders this this lot you've got on the map outlined.
So the question is, do they need to maintain that ditch, or is the ditch company, then that ditch is abandoned
It's a
so they can do
lateral
away with
ditch. It has nothing to do with the ditch company.
it?
I
Okay.
do not believe it's used, but they would have to get signed off for anybody that
Who's
is
below that?
north of them.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is they would need to check with and get signed off from anybody north of that lateral ditch.
Anybody north of the lateral ditch.
Okay, so they would need to check with that and get that signed off. Okay, that makes sense, does, okay. Does that, Teresa? That makes sense to you? Okay, all right. And then as you indicated, the one share that your company shows they have, that share is already dedicated.
A half a share.
I'm sorry, half share. That's already dedicated to secondary water.
It is,
Oh, it is, okay,
according to our records.
right. Yeah. What's, thank you.
Well, as far as secondary water goes, they'll have to pay a connection fee, make sure they have a service. They'll have to stop in by the office somewhere and fill out all the paperwork that we have to have. And then they'll have to come up with a half a share of water from somewhere to cover the water for this new house.
Okay.
May I
Water.
say something?
Well,
Okay. Mayor Little?
The house in service.
Will a half a share be sufficient, Neil?
Could I just make a comment on that?
Can you hear okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah. The half share of water was for 501 West Island Road, but 501 West Island Road included both of those properties because it all was just one lot to start with. And so that half share included both halves of the lot.
Okay, that was your understanding at the time, was that your half share was to be for the full two crop?
Yes, but it was for our whole lot, which included both the front and the back of that. So the half share, actually, when we had the half share and we had the irrigation part in that, it covered the whole area, both the front and the back.
And then you got secondary water for the back as well as the front. It's already pumped.
So there's a one of those water boxes on the back and one on the front. And they were both with the secondary water half share that we have.
Half a share was only the house in right now.
Are there
That's
two?
the only one.
But-
The other.
Actually, the whole thing, because the whole thing was ours. And we watered both the front and the back with
Oh.
that half share.
Okay, Neil, are there two water boxes there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a water box.
They ran everything in, but that doesn't mean that she was either paid a connection fee or was
For the share?
plugged in or supplied water for the new house. You can't have that one deal that's dedicated to this house cover a whole nother house. You can't do that.
But
Because
it was,
new
it
house
was,
has to have its own water. And
it
so
was for the for
water
both
from
the
somewhere.
front and the back. Because it was all one piece before we got it. Before we cut the lot in half, that water was for both, and it has a water box on both the front and the back.
For the secondary water,
Uh-huh,
right?
for the secondary water.
As far as secondary water is concerned, you're gonna have to show up with more water. Unless you can cut some kind of deal with the ditch company or something like that. But as far as work,
I-
you'll have to have more water. You'll have to cover that
I don't
new house
understand
and
that,
put it in their name.
because for the secondary water, we did water both.
Front and back.
Both the front and the back.
Yeah.
With that water that we had.
I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm
Yeah,
telling you what we
yeah.
got.
I'm not trying to argue either. I'm just trying to explain what we had, or what we do have. That,
So where do you suggest that, how does the water shares, I'm Wendy, by the way. Where do the water shares come from? Because people are building here in Morgan, and so, they have to get water shares. So could you, let us know about that?
Water. Years ago, the water was adjudicated to a certain piece of property. That 0.5 half share that you had was adjudicated to your property, and the normal adjudication over time was a share per acre. And you would have probably originally got a share per acre because you're pretty close to an acre, but you've only got a half share.
we had about, both of our lots together are about 5/8 of an acre. And I know before we had the secondary water, when we just had the irrigation ditch, we would get a certain amount of water per, I don't know, can't remember, every 10 days or whatever it was. And it would water and cover our whole piece of property, which at that point was one piece of property, our 5/8 acre at 501 West Island Road. But that part was included in the 501 West Island Road.
Okay, so as I'm hearing the conversation, let me see if I can sort this out.
Yeah,
Mudrolls have, and according to this, come a half share of acre, half a share of water, excuse me. And their Mudrolls' theme is that they have used that half share to irrigate their property in the past. And at this point, they're dividing their property into two lots. At one point, this half share acre was given to secondary water, so secondary water could use this water to water that piece of ground. And that's kind of the Mudrolls thought. Secondary water is telling us that in order to service the second home, they would need to have some more water, is what secondary's position is.
Correct. It would be needed to the new
we would,
house
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
lot.
As far as how to answer this question, I guess part of the question is, if an acre comes in, it's one share per acre, is that correct?
That's what, yeah, that's what that.
And that was secondary water typically had a share per, if a development comes in, typically it's a share per acre. So part of the question is how we solve this piece with secondary water requesting a second half share for only a quarter acre piece of ground coming in.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how we resolve that scenario. At least that's what I'm seeing the parties saying.
I think that we would have enough with the half share to water both sections, because that's what we've always done, is water both pieces with that
Mhm.
half. We would need more city water, but the secondary water, we've always watered both pieces.
And with the house being on it, you're not gonna need as much
You're-
water anyway,
Like,
because
you're not
we'll
gonna have
have
as much
parking
grass.
gravel and driveway
Yeah,
and some garden, a little bit of grass. But, we would just really hope to be able to build so we can be here to help my mom and Dan and have a home, just like all you guys.
Okay, Gary, do you have any thoughts?
Just jump into it. So
Oh, we can't hear you.
No.
So she has a half a share right now that services the full acre. Is
They
that what
only
you're
got,
saying?
their lots,
We
how
never-
big their lot?
Our whole lot,
How much
both
ground
the
they own?
front and back together is only about 5/8 of an acre. And
5/8?
it's about 5/8 of an acre.
They, how big's their lot?
When
Their
they,
acreage?
when they were on, when they're on flood, they were part of the flood that went every 10 days. And so they got the equivalent of almost an hour's worth of water.
Uh-uh.
If they were in the city where we have to split the turns, they get the water every 7 days, but they only get half the water.
So how,
The question is, you've got a whole new house coming in and, if we start allowing two houses to come in on one lot and no additional water and an extra hookup, then down the road, there's going to be some issues.
But the question is,
how much actual ground do they own?
The second lot is about a third of an acre.
No, it's not even that. It's because it's 5/8 of an acre for the whole, for
Mhm.
both parts together.
Okay,
7?
so whatever half of 5/8 is.
And we never ever got an hour worth of
More than a half an acre. Okay,
water. We got like 10 or 15 minutes or something. like
That's
that.
talking about when you.
if the standard is a
Yeah, we
share
had
per
the-
acre, and they have more than a half an acre, then the standard probably would indicate more than a half a share.
Shares aren't going to be split below a half a share.
Right, for sure. Nobody's gonna
Need-
ask for that. Yes, for sure.
We would need city,
That-
but I think that
That's got to stay with one house, and you can't have two houses run off of that one share. If somebody
Mm.
sells, now what?
Mm.
We're
Um,
gonna have a fight over who has the water. It needs to be two separate water shares.
So
You can't
can I ask,
houses off of the one share that they have for that house. I'm not gonna accept that.
Right, and I get that now. The other thing,
Mayor Little?
if you're gonna organize, if you're gonna have a 20 lot subdivision, though, you'll end up with 4 houses off of one share. So you have more than one house on a share of water. In a new subdivision,
Well, that would.
they
that
give
would
you,
be
they give you a share per acre. You could end up with 5 houses on that 1 acre, 5 houses off of one share.
Well, you generally, in that condition, they have to have enough water. They have to show us they have enough water for everything. If they don't have enough for every house, they have to add it right now. I won't go with that one deal on that single house to cover both of them.
And I hear you.
I
I
have
hear
to
you.
figure that out.
Garrison, thought
So-
you had.
Mayor Little?
Okay.
Mayor,
so,
I have a question.
go ahead.
No,
So,
I'll give the time to Gary. We're gonna listen to Gary first.
Okay. So what I'm understanding is we got 0.67 acres to begin with.
Yeah, 1.5.
There's been a subdivision of the lot,
They divide the lot
lawful subdivision,
basically in half.
and that was
Yeah.
previously subdivided. So there are 2 legal lots.
Yep.
One is 0.37 acres, the other is 0.30. And so the secondary water company requires 1 share per 1 acre of
Correct.
property, right?
Typically, and you have a new subdivision come in, yeah,
Okay.
share per acre.
But you got another variable too, and that is that you can't have two homes operating off the same meter, same secondary meter.
They'd have to
There
have a second meter and a second
Have-
hookup and a second fee paid for.
Have to be,
Yeah.
have to be a second meter and a second fee paid.
Well, they've already got that in. What they
They-
don't have is.
They've already got that in. So there's this, there's two meters.
That's already, in. There's no meter.
It's only 1 meter right now until, yeah.
But there's two
But
water
there's two
boxes.
water boxes.
There's
There's-
one in back and one in front.
One box, they got a second box.
lot
I
line
don't think the
adjustment.
second box is in. I think
Yeah,
they just have the lateral.
They would need to do that though.
You'd
The
have to have
second box
another
and
box.
second meter.
Oh.
Sure.
I didn't go look, the kid that went and looked, but he's not here now.
But that's
Okay.
the question.
But she
And
says
both
the
lots
lines
have been
in.
serviced by two separate meters this whole time.
There's not a second meter.
Oh,
So it's just one meter servicing both?
okay.
No, I'm asking, is that? yeah.
Yes.
They didn't water.
Where's you say there's two hookups. Where's the other hookup?
Yes, I think we just learned that there's only
There's-
one.
She said they have two boxes.
There's
not-
2 hookups.
There's 1 meter, but
One,
there's,
yeah.
there's two water boxes.
One
There's
is
one
front.
in front and one in back.
Valve boxes. They're just valve boxes.
Yeah.
The green valve box?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
It's
not a meter.
Is it along Island Road or on Webster Lane, I mean?
and it's actually the address, our address is Island Road.
So it's on Island Road rather than Webster Lane?
Yes. And we wouldn't be going off Webster Lane anyway. When we build, we would be going off Island Road.
Go ahead.
Are Mood Rose on secondary water?
Yeah, they are.
We have secondary water.
What house?
Their
They're home.
original house.
And that was covered by the half a share she had.
Be their house and there's apparently water in their back lot with it if they what? Are you doing anything with your back lot currently? You water it at all or is it not being taken care of?
We have watered it, yeah, ever since that we had it, yeah.
Water and it was secondary.
Are they
If
watering
they're-
with
It's not,
secondary or
it's not
flooding?
using a ditch, it has to be.
Yeah.
So they're gonna end up using half the water because of the house. Half the secondary water,
Have the secondary water.
but they're currently, the requirement goes down with the house. Right?
You need secondary water?
Yeah, what, we have secondary water for the whole.
No lawn, no landscaping on the
The
second one.
whole reason you behind the shared
Right.
acre is because that's what they use.
Sure. Yeah, right, right.
I can't hear.
Measured coming out of the pond. And we pump it and we measure it going in, we measure it coming out. And the whole reason that we go a share per acre
Acre.
is because that's the use.
Right.
So a half a share, take care of half an acre,
If you use the same formula, yeah.
which means in this case, you're 17/100ths over a half an acre, which so.
You'd be using less secondary water. And if there's a house there, you're
Yeah.
not gonna be watering
they're-
the only lawn and stuff like that where the house is.
My husband's from Phoenix. He'd totally love having no lawn. We'll just do cement. But no, we would like to be able to
That's
have
not-
the water share.
so you get water or not.
So you're 0.17 over half an acre.
Yeah, 17.
You would,
17.
you would only have required half an acre if they were 0.17 less than,
So that's what the standard is.
Well, no,
but the standard is 1 acre per, or one acre of water, or excuse me, 1 share of water per 1 acre of land. Here we have half a share of water on just over half an acre of land.
But that-
right?
but I
Is that
think
right?
but what I think you're saying is that there's no less than a half an acre increment and each parcel needs its own half a share regardless of the acreage.
Its own water historically in the
Regardless of,
city.
right, that's what, yeah.
They're starting to say,
But you're right, it's
right,
0.17.
That's the difficult part of it.
That's
Is
one
it such a
angle.
small
Mhm.
difference?
That's one angle. The other angle is anytime you have a new home or new development, there needs to be water to cover that. Dedicate the secondary water. There's the other piece of the discussion.
Historically, people in the city, we've been wanting half a share if they just have a house.
If they put one, if they bring one
Okay,
house,
that's the way it is, and she's in the city.
if they bring one house in.
And is that how it, that was my question.
That's
Is that-
how it's
is that
historically.
Legal,
worked.
is that written up that every home has a half a share of water?
Well, that's what they have to hook on.
Does
Does it-
Mark Heiner's house, Mark Heiner has 2 houses on that one lot. Does he have half a share for each lot?
Share of water for secondary water, every home. Well,
If you just bring one home in,
well, if then that's the case, then
if you're developing, if you just bring one home in, that's what's been. The whole development has been one share per acre of a development. If you bring one home in, it's been half a share to bring that home in. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. If you have a big development, you divide up the water, and it's generally a homeowners association, and they're the ones that have to pay it. You have a big meter and you meter it. This is different.
Right, it's one home.
She's not, I doubt if she's metered. I could go look. If she's got an 1.5 inch or a 2 inch line, she's metered. Other than that, she's not metered.
I think you're right, Neil.
She just
So
uses.
gentlemen, excuse me, what can you do to help us in this?
Who are you talking to?
yeah.
Well, whoever has answers and can help us.
And that's.
That's part of that, I think she also asked, where do I get a share from? Like, where do I get it? Right?
She said, how can we help? What do they need to do next?
So,
Yeah, what are you saying? What are you thinking? Give us some thoughts.
well, it's kind of, there's, thought is, we definitely treat subdivisions different than we treat individual homes.
Right.
On individual parcels. Because every home in a subdivision doesn't have to have half an acre of water. Because this, we go by the acre, right? And there's usually in a R110 is about 2.6 homes. If you take out per acre, if you take out the improvements in the roads and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's a different standard for subdivisions than there is for just individual lots coming in. That's the first thing I noticed.
Okay,
Is there a reason for that? Just simply because you got a master meter or because you got, like you require less of a subdivision than you do of an individual home like this on a 1/3 acre of land? Is there a reason for the difference between the two?
so could we call this a subdivision?
No, it's already there. It's already subdivided.
Okay,
And
so
it's-
if we
But so
Could-
that's the question. Am I reading that right?
Well, somehow we've got to figure out.
If we put the secondary water for the back lot, whatever they use, just on our meter,
no,
could we do that? And just that we pay the secondary water for both halves?
but say you never sell out.
So a problem is that they don't break, and I know none of the
Right.
companies break their shares
Right, we're not
down
using-
to half shares. That's
Right.
one of the big problems is less than a half share. I'm sorry.
Right.
Did I say half share?
We do it.
Okay, you know, what? You've been with me long enough. You understand my mind. So that's part of the problem. The second thing is they need the second meter or the second hookup. And so it appears to me that fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know how you're going to split that. You know, as long as they're relatives and that type of thing, it always seems simple. But then all of a sudden, one year, one house is sold, you're operating off of 1 meter. I got that very problem in Layton right now, where the two were related to each other. And now they're not related to each other anymore. And the one has the meter from Weber Basin or Weber Water. And the other one has a lateral off of that with no meter. And and they're not letting, they don't know now that they're starting to meter the water and charge by the metered water. This guy here is claiming that this guy's using too much, so he's cutting him off. He put a little valve on there and is cutting him off. And so you get that kind of problem that develops. So I get it, I get what they're saying. So the sum total of it, I guess, is when you got a separate parcel,
It's gotta be that way.
it's got to be that way. You got to have a separate meter and you got to at least have a half an acre of water. So that's the way I read it. But
So where do all the new homes going in get their shares of water? Because there's tons of new homes going here in Morgan. I've lived here all my life, mostly, and we'd like a home too. I mean, honestly, I think there's got to be a way or obviously, is it money that talks? Because these, big homes are going in, or what do we need to do? I mean, how hard is it to get a
Give
share
you
to that
for
back lot?
instance, Pheasant Run subdivision is previously the Harding property.
Mhm.
When the developer came to this same meeting, there was 17 acres that was de-developed. So Harding's had to turn over 17 shares of water, which was adjudicated to the property. That's where the water
Mhm.
comes from. It's normally adjudicated.
so
So,
So
The outside water, essentially, the secondary water.
secondary water.
Secondary water, that 17 shares had to be dedicated to the secondary system for service to the subdivision.
So what she's
Mhm.
asking is where
okay,
can somebody, if they needed a half share, get a half share of water
Yes, that's right. That's what I'm asking.
secondary to her lot?
Find somebody, reservation, somebody on the ditch might have reservoir water or ditch water they want to sell or have to share.
Or lease, I get, well, share. Can't lease it.
Oh, your mic's off, sorry.
The only, I'm aware that there are possibly some shares on the South Morgan ditch that might be available. The only person I know that has excess shares is Fran Turner.
Fran Turner, okay.
Yes, I know they
That's-
have extra water, but whether they're willing to sell it or not, I don't know that.
And would that be ditch irrigation, or would we have the access to the secondary water?
okay.
If you purchased it, it would have to go to secondary. It would
Right,
be
okay.
taken out of the turns for the flood water, and it would have to be dedicated to secondary.
Okay.
About how much is a half a share of water? About what's the
Uh,
cost?
It really depends on what they're
Depends.
charging, but normally it's gonna be a
Don't know.
minimum of about 2,000 a share.
And so about 1,000, that's for the half a share or full share?
Well, 2,000 a share, it'd be 1,000 for a half share, but it's up to
Yeah.
the person that owns the water as to what they charge because it's personal property.
Gotcha, understood. Okay.
The other thing is,
Right.
what if we dedicated our half share to the back lot and we just watered our lawn with city water?
That,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Within the area of the secondary water, you cannot use culinary water to water your property. Everybody that builds a home in the area where secondary water is available must hook on to secondary water. Even if you choose not to use it, you still have to hook on to it.
Okay, so
Okay.
everybody needs that secondary?
So the
Okay.
question I have is, as water gets more and more scarce and those shares get more and more scarce, and people want to divide off a parcel like this, what is the answer? Because there's, I get it. I get
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. You have to have a separate connection. Does that mean the development stops because there is no secondary water available to some properties? Or does it mean, certainly a person needs to make effort to find that half share or whatever they need to share. But if there is absolutely no share, is there any provision that the secondary water companies come up with to be able to help with that situation,
We don't
or,
have the water either. All our water comes from the ditch company and they've allocated whatever they can.
yeah,
It isn't like we don't have a big pile of water.
Extra
yeah, that's
water.
what I was guessing.
We don't have any.
Normally, it's the ditch
Now, what do you do about all those California houses that are coming in?
who has it.
So
But
I
there's gonna
guess
be-
that was what we had to
Thousands.
end up in doing with Red Rock, and we ended up in doing that with Mahogany Ridge, is what we ended up in doing is using Weaver Basin water,
Hmm.
and that supplemented our secondary to the point where they were able to use secondary for, for outside use. Because we've got, what, 20.
We was on a 5-year plan up there, wasn't we? We buying 20 shares a year.
So it was 100 share, 100 acre, 100 acre
shares,
feet.
was it not? Or
Yeah,
was it-
100 acre feet, I think, wasn't it? I can't
Well,
remember.
they cover Morgan. We
Anyway,
were-
we can look that up, but the bottom line is, um, fair enough,
Yeah.
new connection, half acre. When you run out and when there's no way of getting it, what do we do? And
Mm.
we as a group need to figure that one out. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get that to you. And you can't get water out of a rock.
Are there two different water companies? There's the Morgan Ditch Company and then the Weaver Basin.
But theoretically, to Carl's point, is that the example he used is a good example, because typically someone that's going to buy a farm ground, for example, and Carl made a good point, that has water dedicated to it, or it has shares of water on it for irrigation, which they then can turn over to secondary water. I mean, so, and I assume all the farm ground in town has probably water dedicated to it, or shares of water dedicated to it, I would think.
Yeah,
Unless they've sold it.
I think there's water dedicated, but that's the problem. In this day and age, a lot of realtors are telling people it's personal property, you sell it separate from the land.
Land.
And, it's an issue because there's been water sold off that was adjudicated to the land.
Yeah.
My guess, at one time, this property had enough water to cover everything. Half of it's been sold off. I'm only guessing because they don't have enough water now to cover the whole piece.
And that's unfortunate.
And that could be what we're looking at here, but I don't know that, and I don't need to research it. I just know what we have to have. It's secondary.
Is there a list somewhere of all the secondary, extra secondary water? Is there a list somewhere of all the extra secondary water shares available,
You don't have any
like
extra
owner?
water.
So
So
what he's asking is,
if you were in our shoes, what would you do? What are our options?
We can try to assist to find one within the ditch company, but if we can't find one within the ditch company, then the next place is Weaver Basin. They own the water anyway. We have a right to use it.
So
technically, what she suggested to begin with, if there are no secondary shares available, then the only option is what we did in Mahogany Ridge and Red Rock, and that is to use the culinary that we have access to through Weaver Basin to water exterior lawns, that type of thing, if we don't have any water, right?
Right.
Yeah. Is there any other option?
The city's not gonna do that for one lot at a time.
Yeah.
We're not gonna go to Weaver Basin and buy a half share for one lot at a time, I don't think.
Well, no, we've got 100 acre feet that it's not all allocated right now to use, but what I'm saying is that goes into our culinary system, right?
Mhm.
And so just like up there or down here, with Red Rock, that's the only other solution is to use, to charge them additional money every month for use of Weaver Basin water, the same way we do with the other users up above Mahogany Ridge and Red Rock. I don't know what the other answer is, Mayor, other than if there's no secondary shares available, I think they need to make a good faith effort. to go
Right,
find
first,
those.
have them chase it first, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Then they look to just go down to Weaver Basin and buy half a show.
So
The mayor's gonna say something.
So what do you want? What do you want us to, if,
let me try and see if I can summarize what I'm hearing. I can see if I can summarize the scenario I'm hearing. Okay, let me start at the top. The ditch company has indicated that the lateral ditch is not their ditch, but you would need to communicate with the folks further to the north along that lateral ditch to determine the use of that in order to keep that ditch open and maintain that ditch. That's one piece we talked about. The other piece we talked about is from the secondary water scenario, they would need to have for this new building lot, come in and hook up, come into the secondary water office, fill out paperwork they have in their office, and then also pay a connection fee and at the appropriate time, put a meter on that line. The secondary folks usually want to be able to be there to inspect that, hook up that connection. In addition to that, secondary water positions, they need a half a share of water to go with that connection, with that new build. As far as paying the half share of water, one option would be to check with other members on that ditch to see if anybody is willing to or wanting to sell a half share of acre. That's one option. Another option would be to see if there's anybody else that has a share in another ditch potentially. That half a share, when obtained, will be then dedicated to the secondary water system once that half share is contained. If the ditch company and or another ditch company doesn't have any, you can't find any shares there, then their option would be to check with Weaver Basin, see if you can obtain a half a share of water from Weaver Basin. Those are the options at this point as I see it.
One other thing, if they have like, somebody has its own personal Echo reservoir water, and you can get that, that's good water. Anything like that we can transfer over really easy and put in secondary water.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah.
Typically, we have a motion this meeting to that effect. Tony, are you? Somebody want to make a motion? You restate the whole thing or make the motion to the summary I just put out, unless there's something else you see ought to be done differently.
Question on Weaver. Who,
Make a
Mayor?
motion. What you say was okay, covers it.
Okay, Neil made a motion. And the summary I stated would be Neil's motion. Is there a second?
how much of this do we do and how much of it does
That's what I was
the
asking.
city have to do? I mean, like checking with the Weaver Basin and all of these things. Does your committee do that or do we do that?
That's something you do as a private individual. The city doesn't do that.
Okay,
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passed. Any further business for secondary water items?
so would our first step then be to try to obtain the half share of water? Would that be our first next thing to do?
Problem like we have now. Most of the time, if they build a subdivision here, or realistically, they should have had enough water with this lot to cover both of them. So that made it harder to do. They have enough ground.
Yeah.
The ditch company makes out another certificate. That way we've got them split. So if somebody sells, the other one has his water. And there's only separate deal, but we probably need to get together with the ditch companies in the city and see if we can figure some way that we can line up to give people an idea of how to cure this. Before we get here and try to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree.
And then get it in a form like if the city gives the people that come in or secondary water gives them and say, this should be it. This is kind of what you need to do before you come to a meeting, so we don't end up.
I can't, it's as loud as it goes. I can't hear him.
One of the key elements of that is just finding out how many acre feet share represents. Because your main concern is that you have water properties. So we need to, I need to know that. I heard that.
So, I'm curious, the 17 shares turned over. Developer.
We can't hear on this end. Sorry, but we can't hear what they're saying.
Microphones are off.
That doesn't matter. It's already done, that doesn't matter.
Did we end it all?
No,
Oh, you're talking about.
but that, yeah, that's it. That's immaterial. Okay, all right. Anything else?
Mayor,
Okay.
once we obtain that share of water, then our next step, do we have another meeting with you?
Your next
All?
step is meet with secondary water and fill out the paperwork at the secondary water office. And then
Okay.
have them, go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, you'll need to meet with secondary water. They'll give you a packet. You fill out the information. We need to know, make sure that the second house has a separate line going to it. We can't split off the line that's there already. You have to have a separate one,
Okay,
completely separate line. That way, if something gets sold, not like he talks about, and they lock somebody off, their responsibility to run that in, or the developer or the contractor, whoever. And then we'll come out and look at it, and then we'll put green box in, and then that, and it's half a share of water, and you're good to go.
okay,
You don't need to come here again, just kind of get that, come over to secondary water, meet with the secretary, and she'll give you the forms to fill out.
okay. And does this coordinate, I mean, if we can get that, I mean, I know the city's putting in to get our lot at least stubbed in for utilities. I mean, we're kind of doing a time crunch here, aren't we?
Is she in that road construction on Island Road? Is that what she's talking about now?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Before we do that road, they're trying to get all their utilities stubbed out because we're gonna redo the road.
Have two separate lines going for this, or just one line to one house?
Just need to make sure you have two.
You have to have.
Two
you have to
lines,
have a
okay.
Line for Moudreau House, and then you have to
Okay.
have a line for the new one.
Okay,
If you don't have two
But-
lines, then you'll have to run another one across.
okay.
And I can't remember what side you're on, whether you got to cross the road or just come off the side.
We're on the south side of the road.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, all right, well, we'll work on that. And if anybody also, I mean, if you hear of water shares, I mean, we'd really appreciate that, too. I don't know everybody who has water shares in Morgan or whatever, but
We also don't know who all is supposed to be that we're supposed to check with on the ditch.
okay, yeah, we need to figure out how to find out the people on the ditch line as well.
All right,
So,
thank you.
Okay.
Declare this meeting adjourned.